HOA planted spike strips on my truck. Then I flashed my sheriff badge. You ever hear the sound of betrayal? It's not always loud. Sometimes it's the hiss of air escaping a tire. That morning, it was both. My name is Jordan Pierce, Sheriff of Limestone County, Texas third-generation lawman, single father, veteran, and lately, unwilling resident of Maplewood Oaks. Maplewood was supposed to be a fresh start. After my wife died, I promised my daughter Claire I'd give her something quieter than the dusty ranch roads she grew up on. Somewhere clean, safe, good schools and no drama, the realtor said. That realtor didn't mention Patricia Greaves. She introduced herself with a stack of bylaws in one hand and a measuring tape in the other. I'm the HOA president here, she'd said. Welcome to the community. That mailbox is a quarter-inch too tall. I laughed, thinking she was joking. Patricia wasn't the joking type. From that moment on, it was war. But the kind you don't realize you're in until you've already stepped on the landmine. I tried to play it cool, never telling anyone what I did for a living. I didn't wear the uniform around the house. Figured, let folks meet Jordan the dad, not Sheriff Pierce, but Patricia and her so-called HOA Enforcement Division, a trio of men in tactical vests with embroidered security patches, and a truck that looked suspiciously like an old Border Patrol vehicle, weren't the type to leave well enough alone. First it was complaints. My work truck was commercial equipment and couldn't be in the driveway. Then it was the flags, my father's Navy flag, and my own sheriff badge banner. Visual clutter, they called it. I filed appeals, politely, every time, and every time they came back with another fine or citation unsigned, unfiled, completely bogus, fake HOA paper with real-world threats. I kept the peace for Claire's sake, but last Thursday, it got physical. That morning I was headed to drop Claire at school. We were a few feet out of the driveway when I felt the rear of my vehicle jerk violently to the left. The whole SUV bucked. The crunch was deafening. Claire screamed. The dashboard lit up like Vegas. I slammed the brakes and jumped out. Both back tires were shredded, cut to ribbons. Steel spike strips lay like snakes beneath the wheels, glittering with sharp malice. Claire was crying, my daughter, my baby, and that's when I saw him, HOA Officer Greg Talley, snickering behind a bush with his phone out, filming. He didn't see me yet. I was done being polite. I crouched, took one of the strips, and marched right across the street to their self-declared HOA HQ, a converted garage with surveillance cameras and a chain-link fence. Patricia stood in the driveway sipping coffee, smug like a cat at a bird feeder. You should have read the speed limit signs we posted, she said flatly. We had to do something. This is private property. This isn't a checkpoint, I growled. It's attempted vehicular sabotage. She smiled wider. Prove it. Oh, Patricia, you just handed me a bad-shaped gift. I said nothing, just turned and walked back, because she had no idea who I really was. But she was about to find out. They thought they were dealing with a pushover in boots. They didn't know they just lit a fuse in the Limestone County Sheriff's Office. I spent that day pretending to be a regular dad. I called Claire's school, told them she'd be a little late, called for a tow, sent photos to my insurance. But while Claire sat inside watching cartoons with a bandaged elbow, I was compiling evidence. Every ounce of training I had from 2 decades in law enforcement kicked in. Step 1. Document everything. I took high-resolution photos of the spike strip, the tire damage, and the surveillance camera pointed toward our driveway, one I hadn't noticed before. I traced its angle direct line of sight to where the trap had been planted. Their footage would have it. Step 2, chain of custody. I bagged the spike strip in a clear evidence sleeve and placed it in the same lockbox we use for narcotic seizures. I wasn't just angry now, I was methodical. Step 3, leverage silence. They still didn't know who I was. I intended to use that. By Friday morning, I was back in uniform. Not to wave it around. Not yet, but because duty called. Our office had a case out near the river missing person. likely wandered off during a mental health episode. I joined the search, combing brush with the team, but my mind kept drifting back to Maplewood Oaks, to Claire's frightened face, to the sound of Greg Talley's laugh. That night, I couldn't sleep, so I did something I rarely do. I pulled up county records and dug into the HOA's filings, and that's when it all clicked. Maplewood Oaks. HOA wasn't real. There was no formal incorporation on record, no annual filings, no charter, just a handful of agreements signed at the time of home purchases unfiled with the county recorder, unenforceable in court, smoke and mirrors. So how were they collecting fines? How did they have security? I found the answer in a name that came up too many times: Greaves Management Solutions, LLC. That was Patricia's side business. And guess who her 3 HOA enforcers were? Former bouncers. No licenses, no training, no authority. It was a racket. The next day, I ran into my neighbor, Darren. He was wheeling a pressure washer out from his garage when he waved me down. "Hey, Jordan, you okay? Claire all right?" I nodded. "She's shaken. That spike strip could have killed someone." Darren's jaw tightened. "You know, they did the same thing to my wife last month. Flattened her tires for speeding. We paid the fine just to avoid drama." I paused. "You ever think about fighting back?" He scoffed. "Against Patricia. She's got half the board under her thumb. Everyone else is too scared." I leaned in. "I'm not..." Darren looked up. You a lawyer or something?" "No," I said slowly. "I'm the sheriff." His mouth fell open. You're Sheriff Pierce of Limestone County, guilty." He set the pressure washer down like it had suddenly gotten heavier. "Then, you can do something about this." I nodded. "But I need your help." By Sunday, I had 5 neighbors willing to go on record. All had been fined. 3 had been threatened. One, Mr. Alvarez, had cameras disabled when he tried to record the enforcers confronting his teenage son. I set up a sting. That night, I parked my backup cruiser and unmarked Tahoe at the end of my street, out of view. Then I drove my personal truck, fitted with hidden dash cams, back to my driveway. Greg showed up 20 minutes later, wearing gloves, holding a metal rod. He crouched down behind the bush, same spot as last time, and I saw the glint of another strip in his hands. That's when I stepped out. "Evening." "Greg." He froze. I flicked on the cruiser lights. Red and blue strobes lit the street. 2 deputies emerged from the shadows. Greg tried to run. Didn't get 10 feet. We arrested him on the spot. Criminal mischief, reckless endangerment, possession of prohibited devices. At the station, he folded like a cheap card table. Said Patricia paid him $300 a week to keep the neighborhood quiet. Claimed she told them the sheriff's office had approved their enforcement team. When I showed him my badge, he nearly threw up. Later that week, I knocked on Patricia's door with a signed warrant. Her smug expression cracked when I handed her the paperwork. "I'm placing you under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, impersonation of law enforcement, and reckless endangerment." She blinked like I'd slapped her. I didn't know you knew exactly what you were doing," I said. "And now the whole county will too." The news broke fast. Local media ran the story: fake HOA leaders arrested for sabotaging residents. The footage of Greg planting the strip went viral, and the public furious. Turns out Maplewood wasn't the only community Patricia had her claws in. Another subdivision in the next county had similar complaints. My investigation team expanded the case overnight, and we weren't done yet. Patricia's arrest was only the first domino. The more we dug, the uglier it got. The morning after she was booked, my inbox exploded. Emails from residents across 2 counties, some furious, some afraid, many just grateful. Someone finally stood up. A woman named Letitia from Clearwood Pines sent in photos of similar citations, same fonts, same signatures. A man in Amber Ridge wrote that he'd been threatened with foreclosure over a $60 gravel uniformity violation. This wasn't one HOA gone rogue. This was a network. We found the nerve center in a storage unit Patricia had leased in East Caldwell, under Greaves Management Solutions. I personally signed the warrant and went with the task force. Inside, hundreds of files scanned IDs, addresses, private family info, fake violation letters, collections logs, even aerial drone photos, surveillance, weaponized paperwork. More than 50 neighborhoods were listed. They'd created what amounted to a shadow authority system, a fake HOA empire fueled by fear, silence, and forged threats. Patricia didn't just want control, she wanted leverage. That night, I drove back home in stunned silence. Claire was waiting up. She looked up from the couch, hugged me tight. They're going away. Right, I looked her in the eye. We're not just stopping them, baby. We're going to make sure they can't do this to anyone ever again. The next day, my office called an emergency town hall at the county courthouse. We expected maybe a dozen residents. Over 200 showed up. Standing room only. Emotions ran hot. One man shouted, "Why didn't anyone stop this earlier?" A woman near the back sobbed, clutching a violation notice for painting her wheelchair ramp too bright. I took the mic. I didn't know either. I said, voice steady, "And that's what people like Patricia count on: your silence, your fear, your belief that nothing can be done. But I'm here to tell you it ends now." Applause erupted. Some people cried, some just nodded, lips pressed tight. But a shift was happening. People were waking up. By Friday, the DA had joined our task force. We officially launched Operation Paper Crown, a multi-agency investigation into HOA abuse and fraudulent property enforcement. Patricia and her crew were transferred to the county jail under a no-contact order. But as we worked, something kept nagging at me. There was one address Patricia had circled multiple times in her notes: 1805 Ridgeview Drive. It was in Amber Ridge, one of the neighborhoods we hadn't yet subpoenaed. I sent Deputy Lake to knock and ask questions. She never made it past the front porch. A man stepped out with a badge, one that said, Private Municipal Compliance Authority. He flashed it fast, shoved a cease and desist notice in her hand, and told her to leave the premises under threat of HOA arrest. Lake isn't new. She didn't take kindly to threats. But the kicker, that badge was a perfect copy of the state's official compliance insignia, except it wasn't legal. It had been photoshopped and mass-printed. They were counterfeiting government seals. The DA ordered a sweep of Ridgeview. We found a home-turned command center. Inside, dozens of blank badges, fake uniforms, citations printed on seal-embossed paper, and prepaid credit cards used to funnel money from residents too scared to ask questions. But the real punch came from the ledger pages listing payments made to local inspectors. One name made me freeze: Marcus Blevins. He wasn't just a former city zoning official. He was Patricia's ex-husband and my opponent in last year's sheriff's race. It was all coming together. Patricia wasn't just power-hungry. She had a plan. With Marcus, she was building a fake civil enforcement network. Step 1, claim control over neighborhoods. Step 2, create violation streams. Step 3, use the fear and fines to pressure votes, suppress opposition, and slowly assume control of county-level authority. They wanted to privatize law enforcement, starting with neighborhoods and creeping into rural areas, and they almost got away with it. That night, I sat in my living room, the spike strip still locked in the evidence case on my mantel. Claire had fallen asleep on the couch again, exhausted from the tension still lingering like fog in our house. I turned the strip in my hands and whispered to myself, "You picked the wrong street, Patricia." The plan had to change. This wasn't just about arrests anymore. This was about dismantling an ideology. So I picked up the phone. "Deputy Blake, let's call the state. I'm done playing defense. You know the saying, it takes a village. Well, when the village is under siege by a fake HOA militia, it takes a damn army." After discovering Patricia and Marcus's broader scheme to build a shadow authority, I made the call that changed everything. I contacted Sheriff Walters in the neighboring county of Jefferson. He'd seen some weird enforcement notices in his jurisdiction too. Notes taped to doors, fines that didn't come from his office, people showing up at City Hall demanding to appeal violations no one ever issued. He told me I didn't have proof. Now I do. Within 48 hours, we had a multi-county task force. The state attorney general's office got involved. Homeland Security even flagged the fake badges under a counterfeiting statute that could land them in federal prison. But even with the cavalry incoming, I knew we couldn't do this alone. Not on the ground, not where it mattered most inside the neighborhoods, with the people. So I called a meeting at the community firehouse. That Monday night, 50 residents sat on plastic folding chairs while I stood in front of a whiteboard with a marker and a mission. Everyone in this room has been affected. I said, you've been lied to, fined, intimidated, and in some cases, endangered. What we're dealing with is not just harassment, it's organized fraud, racketeering, and in some cases, physical assault. But the real power these people have isn't their fake citations. It's your silence. I drew a big red X through the word fear. It ends now. A hand went up. Mr. Alvarez. He stood. So what do we do? We're just homeowners. They've got uniforms, radios, trucks. I nodded. And now they've got something else. My full attention. You're not just homeowners. You're witnesses. And if you're willing, you can be part of the team that takes them down. That night, we formed what Claire jokingly started calling the HOA Underground. By midweek, every enforcer truck was being tracked. Residents followed suspicious cars with GoPros. One mom had her kid fly a drone over Patricia's old backyard. Turned out there was a stash of uniforms hidden under a tarp behind her shed. We began collecting video evidence, timestamps, statements. Even former HOA officers started flipping. Greg Talley, once Patricia's golden boy, was now under house arrest and furious that she'd thrown him under the bus. He told investigators everything: where they held meetings, how they recruited muscle from out-of-work security contractors, even how they avoided legal registration by using a shell company out of Nevada. We raided 4 storage units, seized over 15,000 files, and froze $2.4 million in illegally obtained funds. One of the officers had even been collecting parking fees on weekends by posing as a city contractor. But the real twist came during a quiet moment in the back of the sheriff's office. I was reviewing evidence when Claire brought in my mail. One envelope stood out, no return address, just the word respect. Inside was a photo of Patricia and Marcus, standing with a local campaign manager from my last election. Back room, handshake, sealed envelope exchanged, and a note. This was never about lawns or flags. It was about votes, about power. They hadn't just been running a scam. They were trying to take over local government one property line at a time. I brought it straight to the AG's team. Within 24 hours, the FBI joined the case. We now had probable cause to believe that Marcus Blevins had used Patricia's network not only to pressure and intimidate voters, but to funnel money into dark PAC's funds that could sway elections, buy influence, and silence dissent. This was no longer a small-town turf war. This was a domestic infiltration scheme. That weekend, we made our move. The plan was precise. I'd go in with my deputies to the Ridgeview Command Center, now acting as their main office. Meanwhile, Jefferson County and state officers would hit the shell companies and satellite properties at the same time. We served 5 federal warrants. We walked in slow badges visible, body cams rolling. Marcus was inside. He turned pale when I stepped in and said, "You're under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, impersonation of law enforcement, and election interference." He tried to laugh. "Come on, Pierce. You think people will care? HOA's just a dirty word. No one pays attention." I leaned in. They will now. News hit the wires that night. Sheriff leads takedown of fake, HOA empire spanning 3 counties, spike strips to subversion, how one father uncovered a voter fraud network. Local sheriff becomes national hero after stopping HOA crime ring. Claire watched the segment on TV, wide-eyed. "Dad, that's you." I smiled, tired. "That's us." But we weren't done yet. Next came court, and that would be the real war. Courtrooms have a particular smell: old paper, fresh coffee, tension. And on the morning of Patricia Greaves's arraignment, you could cut that tension with a butter knife. The courtroom was packed. Local reporters elbowed each other for seats. Behind me sat dozens of homeowners, some in wheelchairs, others holding photos of fines or property damage. A few even wore shirts reading Real Neighborhood. Real Law. Claire sat next to me, her hand squeezing mine. I could feel her nerves. Patricia was let in wearing an orange jumpsuit, still trying to look composed. Marcus followed, eyes darting like a trapped rat. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a military background, didn't waste time. She read the charges aloud. Racketeering, fraud, impersonation of law enforcement, voter intimidation, possession of counterfeit state documents, reckless endangerment of a minor. That last one was personal. Claire's name was on that charge. When Patricia glanced toward me, her expression faltered. She knew. The game was over. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Our evidence was airtight. We had videos of spike strips, audio of fake enforcement threats, digital trails of money laundering, and witness testimony from over 40 residents. One by one, they told their stories. An elderly woman described being threatened with foreclosure for putting a hummingbird feeder on her porch. A veteran said he was fined $500 for flying the American flag at half-mast. A single mom broke down describing how she was told her autistic son's therapy garden violated the visual cohesion clause. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on all counts. Patricia was sentenced to 18 years without parole. Marcus got 22 thanks to the election fraud charges. The other enforcers took plea deals in exchange for cooperation. Several have since gone into witness protection. Turns out Patricia and Marcus had deeper financial ties to off-the-books donors and real estate developers looking to privatize entire neighborhoods. But the story didn't end in the courtroom. After the convictions, the state passed the Community Transparency and Protection Act, requiring all HOAs to be registered, regulated, and audited annually. Fake enforcement actions became felonies. Retaliation against homeowners for filing reports. That's now a criminal offense. The Karen clause, as the media dubbed it, was inspired by Patricia's abuse of HOA power. As for Maplewood Oaks, it's no longer called that. The residents voted unanimously to dissolve the fake HOA and rename the community Claire's Crossing after the little girl who survived a spike strip and helped expose a network that spanned 3 counties. They even put up a new welcome sign. Welcome to Claire's Crossing, protected by justice. Life slowed down after that. Claire's therapy helped. She started drawing again, mostly dogs, stars, and a cartoon version of me in uniform. She still flinches when she hears a tire pop, but she's healing. We both are. I'm back on the job, but with a sharper eye. No more assuming a uniform means legitimacy. No more dismissing neighbor complaints as petty. Justice, I've learned, starts at the end of your driveway. One evening, after dinner, Claire and I walked the street, new pavement, fresh lines, no more fake speed bumps or metal traps. She asked, "Dad, what would have happened if you weren't the sheriff?" I thought for a long moment. Then someone else would have had to be brave enough to stand up. She nodded. "I'm glad it was you." I smiled. "Me too, but I hope it never has to be me again." What happened in our neighborhood could happen anywhere. Fake authority thrives in silence, in fear, in blind compliance. But justice needs voices, needs courage. So speak up, ask questions, challenge false power, and above all, protect your community not just from the outside threats, but from the wolves dressed like sheep. Now I want to hear from you. What would you do if a fake HOA tried to take over your street? Share your thoughts, your outrage, your ideas for change. Because justice isn't just a courtroom verdict, it's a community decision.